You know, sometimes as a renter, you just kind of have to work with what you got. And sometimes what you've got is like four different corners in one little area that is weird. And who put this in here and thought it was okay? But that's all right. We're going to make our own custom corner tree. I love this. I'll show you exactly how to do it. I hope you don't have as many awkward corners as I do because that'll make things a little bit easier for you. But I love the life and texture that this brings to the room. I'm using EMT Conduit as my base. I did have to curve one piece, which I hope you don't have to do because it was a pain in the butt to do. But EMT Conduit, an umbrella stand, and something called MakerPipe fittings. I'll go into that more detail later. Essentially, all you're doing is you're going to get an umbrella stand. You're going to get a large piece of EMT conduit to put in there. And then inside of that conduit, so maybe you get like 1.5 or 2 inch, depending on your umbrella stand, you're going to get a thinner piece of conduit, about 3/4 inch. And that's going to make it easier and cheaper for you to work with the MakerPipe, but we want it to be secure in your umbrella stand. It's a whole thing, but I promise it makes sense. Nobody's going to see it anyways because we're putting French drain on top of that. That comes in a bunch of different sizes. It'll just depend on your particular umbrella stand and what shape or what size width you're going to need. But I played with a 4-inch, a 6-inch just to see if it made a difference. And I think it did, especially when I added a bunch of paper. This is just recycled paper from us moving, and I just duct taped it, or I guess that's not really duct tape, but you know what I meant, masking tape it like crazy. That helps add some girth without adding too much weight, and it helps make some shape, which isn't as critical because once you get the foam on there, you'll see it expands and does its own shape anyways. I use a double digits number of cans of the Great Stuff. That's literally what it's called, the Great Stuff foam. And it's an insulation foam. Home Depot has it. It's usually in the wood section, kind of as an end cap or something. And this is used to fill in cracks, and you spray it on, but it will expand over time. It's going to take a little bit of getting used to, but I highly recommend gloves and plastic on everything. Like plastic on everything, because when this stuff dries, it'll peel right off the plastic. So your base won't get covered, but it'll still have that nice shape to it. Trust me, you'll thank me later. Now here's the thing. It expanded like crazy. So the shape that I thought I was sculpting with the paper, not as critical. Now here's an optional step for you, depending on what type of vibe you're going for. I loved the fantasy look, but shaving it off with a little saw creates a different texture. I wasn't crazy about it, but now that I've gone through this process again, I might do it in the future, and let me tell you why. I got some Oops paint from Home Depot, saved a ton of money because it was already brown, it was already mixed, and that was great. It's so much cheaper than your spray paints and truthfully better for the environment. And I was like, yeah, this is great. I'm going to just mix it up. I've got a brush to everything. But then once you start painting, you're going to run into, well, what about all these nooks and crannies? And not a big deal. You can get it done with time, different brushes and stuff, or layer in spray paints once the bulk of it's done. But I think if I had shaved the tree down and sculpted it a little bit more so it didn't have this kind of fantasy vibe, it probably would have been easier to paint, but you'll figure it out. Now again, this was an Oops paint from Home Depot. I don't know what it was supposed to look like, but I got a base layer down with that, and that's all I'm asking for because it was so much cheaper. But there's nooks and crannies that clearly didn't have any coverage. And that's where we got a spray grip and a bunch of different colors and textures of spray paint to help speed up this nooks and crannies process. I like to layer the darker ones on first, working my way lighter. You do you. However you want to do it, just make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. I liked the matte particular finish, even though it still didn't come out as matte as I would like, but whatever. This is where the MakerPipe fittings come in. These are made in the US, steel, and they work with the conduit. This is 3/4 inch conduit, and I'm able to add in essentially branches. This is going to be our support for our florals and designs. And then we're just going to use our go-to plastic chicken wire. It's not going to scrape you up. Lots of zip ties, and like any floral arrangement, I love to start with my greenery first, working with what I have on hand. Once I had a good sense, I worked in some brown string lighting. This is from Wintergreen, the same people that make my soft twinkle that I use for my Christmas trees. Love the brand. 2 strands, about 100 lights was plenty. Look at the shadows. Even during the day, it is just so relaxing to just sit back and look at. And I love the fantasy element. And I know that throughout the holiday season, I will most likely be redecorating this to go with whatever season we're designing for. But I hope this inspires you to make something of that awkward space and maybe create your own custom corner tree. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm Alessandra.